Hi, I'm Jean Schumacher, founder of Simply Plant-Based, and I've got all kinds of programs to help you to change your health destiny from, oh my gosh, from the weight loss advantage to continuing education and now corporate wellness. So today I'm really excited to have the honor and privilege to be interviewing Hannah Calio. She is the Director of Clinical Research for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. She's conducted several clinical trials using a plant-based diet in the treatment of obesity, diabetes, and metabolic disease. Her research shows that a plant-based diet leads to greater weight loss, improvement in metabolism, and addresses multiple mechanisms behind diabetes. And she is a member of the American Diabetes Association and as a board member for the Diabetes and Nutrition Study Group of the European Association for the Study of Diabetes. She is directly involved in the processes of updating nutritional recommendations for patients with diabetes. Wow. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you, Jeannie, for your kind introduction.
Oh, gosh. Well, you wrote I'm fascinated by the gut biome. I mean, to me, it's just like a whole new world that, that has evolved, but actually it's always been there, but we're just really learning a lot more about it. And you wrote this fabulous article called Diet Impact on Gut Microbiota. And it's the effects of vegetarian and vegan diets on gut microbiota. This was first published in the Frontiers in Nutrition in April of 2019. So, wow, well done. Wait till you guys hear about this article. Oh my goodness. So kudos to you for that. So well done to you.
Thank you. Let me just say that it was a team effort. I didn't write the article by myself. It was a real team effort. Our whole team was working on it for several months.
Nice.
And we were trying to come up with information that would be useful, for the lay audience as well. What can we do to improve our gut microbiome? How can we take advantage of the diet in the best way to change our gut microbiome and get the most metabolic benefits?
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Well, first let's start off because not everybody knows. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. So first let's start off with what is the human microbiota?
The human microbiota are the bacteria that live in our gut, but are also on our skin, in different parts of our body. And we have more bacteria than we have cells in our body. We have 30 trillion of microbes in our body.
That's a lot.
That's incredible. When we put it in a comparison between the number of genes, then we have 3.3 million microbial genes, and we have only 21,000 genes in our DNA. So there's we are more of microbiota, more of bacteria than we are human, to put it that way. So there's a lot that goes into it. And of course, we know we have some good bacteria, but also bad bacteria. And the numbers just tell you how important it is to feed your good bacteria and get rid of the bad bacteria to have a, good balance.
Balance. That seems to be everything. I mean, yeah, homeostasis, good word. Okay, so there's two main phyla that can be found in the body. What, first of all, are they, and what is the difference between the two?
Yeah, so one aspect of the gut microbiome, of the bacteria that live in our gut, is microbial richness, which means the diversity of bacteria that you have in your gut. As an example from practical life, when your financial advisor talks to you about your portfolio,
right.
That's a good way to put it. You don't want to invest everything in one bucket. And the same is with our gut microbiome. We want to have different kinds of bacteria. We want to have a good portfolio, right, so that when something happens, when for example, if we are somewhere where there's a poison in the air or something that kills one specific kind of bacteria, there's still, a few of others that will take care of the environment in our gut. So that's one aspect. And another aspect of our gastrointestinal health is the gut microbiome composition and the balance. There are a few main enterotypes. The first one is Prevotella, which has anti-inflammatory effects and has been associated with the consumption of fruits and vegetables. So people who consume a plant-based diet tend to have higher amounts of Prevotella in their gut. There's also differences around the world. Studies that compare, for example, children living in Africa, in rural Africa, in Burkina Faso, and children living in Europe, in Italy. This study showed that children living in Africa have higher prevalence of Prevotella, higher relative abundance of Prevotella. They have more of Prevotella in their gut compared to other gut bacteria. The second type of bacteria in our gut is Bacteroidetes, the family of Bacteroidetes, which is usually put in a ratio to another bacteria family, which is called Firmicutes. Now, Bacteroidetes to Firmicutes ratio is an important factor for our intestinal health. The higher this ratio, the more Bacteroidetes to Firmicutes, the better for our weight control, and the better also for our cardiorespiratory fitness. So when you step on your treadmill, we can predict about 22% of your performance by only this kind of ratio, the Bacteroidetes to Firmicutes ratio. The higher, the more Bacteroidetes versus Firmicutes, the better you will be performing when you are physically active.
And do the athletes know about this?
Yeah, we should tell them all, right?
Right? I mean, in light of the Game Changers that just came out, that movie,
yeah.
Okay, yes, we get it, plant-based, but do they know about this?
We should hand out all the tests.
Right? Wow. So what's the big difference between the two families of bacteria?
Right. So Prevotella has anti-inflammatory effects. It protects us against inflammation. Inflammation is a process that's involved in cardiovascular disease, in diabetes, in all chronic diseases, and also in autoimmune diseases. And in contrast, Firmicutes tend to be the most pro-inflammatory. That means, the more Firmicutes you have, the higher chances of getting some inflammation in your gut. And if you have inflammation in your gut, then the inflammation will also go to your bloodstream and, will just spread around the body.
Well, what happens if there's an imbalance in the gut microbiota? I mean, I'm just thinking like you take the antibiotics, wow, that's got to wipes out everything, the good, bad, the ugly. I mean, what happens when there's an imbalance?
So where there's imbalance, then a condition that's called the leaky gut can develop. Normally there's tight junctions in our gut between the cells in our lining of our gut. However, if there's any big imbalance in our gut bacteria, these tight junctions may become bigger, and that's called a leaky gut, where even bigger molecules or even whole bacteria may get into the bloodstream. And not only the bacteria themselves, but also their products, like endotoxin, which, toxin, that doesn't sound right? So it's endotoxin. It's something that is produced within our body. The bad bacteria produce this endotoxin that promotes inflammation and also promotes the development of cardiovascular disease and metabolic disease.
Oh,
so you don't want that,
No.
Yeah.
No, no, no. So what's the big difference between someone who's an omnivore, and somebody who is plant-based? What's their bacteria going to be like?
So that's exactly to the point. The leaky gut is very strongly associated with the Western diet. That's high in sugar, high in fat, high in saturated fat, and high in animal products. So this diet promotes the development of leaky gut, that promotes inflammation and the development of all the chronic disease. In contrast to a plant-based diet that will feed the good bacteria in your gut. Now, why is a plant-based diet so different? Well, all the fiber in plant-based foods feed.
And there's a lot.
And there's a lot,
Yeah.
is the main fuel for the good guys in your gut. It's the fiber that feeds the short-chain fatty acid producing bacteria. Short-chain fatty acids are products of the good guys, of the good bacteria in your gut, that have very positive cardioprotective and also metabolically protective properties. The most important one is Butyrate, which has been described as one of the wonder molecules that really is like incredible for your gastrointestinal health, because it's also food for your colonocytes in your large intestine, for the cells in your large intestine, but also it provides the signals to your body and promotes good health in all aspects of good health.
Wow. Okay. It's been observed that, there's a reduced microbial diversity in obese versus non-obese people. What's going on here?
Yeah, that's a great question. Is it that a smaller richness in gut bacteria causes you to gain weight, or is it that gaining weight causes you to lose this gastrointestinal richness? We don't know exactly. Most probably it goes both ways. But obviously, the food that we're eating, is in our hands. So this is something that we can influence. And so if we change our diet, the good news is that we can change the richness of gut bacteria. That's probably the most important fact. We don't need to worry about which way is like more influential. We don't need to worry about how much I can influence. Let's just test it out. Just change your diet and test it out. What's in your power, and you will be amazed by what's possible.
It's true. I've seen so many of the people that I'm helping and coaching, the changes. Oh my gosh.
Mm.
One woman lost her hair when she got pregnant with her second son or her second child, and she never got it back. She went plant-based back in July. Her hair is coming back now.
Wow.
And something else that I've never heard happen, her feet, she had such bad feet that she was going to have surgery for bunions. And so before the surgery, she wanted to lose some weight. So she joined my program. Her feet are straightening out. Her feet are straightening out. I've never seen it happen like that. I mean, it's just incredible. The things that, that can heal within your body, and I'm a living example of it. I mean, I've healed my thyroid. I've, lost over 100 pounds at this point.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, the changes. My husband's reversed multiple sclerosis. So, you can see
huge.
these. Yeah, I mean, you can see some major changes. And it's amazing when, and it makes sense to heal the gut biome. Then everything else is going to fall into place. I mean, that just, duh, I mean, it seems so straightforward, but it's like, And I think that's one of the biggest problems, though, is like we talk about it so simple, let's just change. But it's difficult to do this. I mean, there's the cheese addiction. I mean, Dr. Barnard talked about that, the cheese trap. And after I did that series with him, that was it. That was no even remote thoughts of cheese anymore. No, I'm good with that. But It's hard. I mean, you're dealing
Mm,
with food addiction, you're dealing with emotional eating, you're dealing with social pressures, and
yeah,
you can't go a mile down the road without going past the, the fast food
right.
gauntlet,
Mm,
without this. So I think it is, it's simple to do,
right.
but it is so hard. I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons why I provide like
Mm.
support groups and help for people to change, because it is tough. I mean,
Yeah, that's so
so
important. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think most people are kept by like not knowing how much the plant-based diet can do for them. They feel like, oh, it's just diet. It doesn't make any big difference. But just experiencing, the difference, like give it a try for at least 3 weeks. You will see the huge difference in how you feel.
oh,
It's
I know.
just like incredible. So if people had the chance to just test it out for 3 weeks or so, more and more people would just decide to do this permanently.
Well, my next question talks about systemic inflammation. And I
Mm.
had a woman, I was teaching these courses at a local community college on plant-based, and I did a whole sequence of these things. And the first class, we did them on Saturdays, Saturday to Saturday, 4 Saturdays in a row. And she had been in such chronic pain
Mm.
from inflammation, rheumatoid arthritis,
Mm.
and she was at 35. 10 years later,
Mm.
still in phenomenal chronic pain and on medication for 10 years. And she said to me, she was on pain medication, and she said the pain medication doesn't help.
Mm.
It doesn't do anything for the pain. It just makes me not care
Right.
that I'm in pain. So she enrolled in my course. She went home Saturday night after listening to the first lecture. She cleaned out the house, went shopping. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 days, okay? She woke up and went to go take her pain medication. And you know how you kind of do that systematic check of your body, like,
Yes.
hey, my head, any pain going on here, anything going on? And she realized for the first time in 10 years,
Wow.
she was not in pain anymore.
Wow.
And she just sat
Wow.
down and cried
Yeah.
profusely. And then when she came in on Saturday and told us, we all passed around the box of
Mm.
you cry a lot in this
Mm.
lifestyle, tears of joy,
Yes.
because you're so happy to see these changes taking place in your body and your body healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Healing.
This
Yeah.
is so huge. We are running a study with people with rheumatoid arthritis right now. I'm not able to share all the results, but let me just share an experience of one of our study participants.
Please.
She's a young mother. Each time she would pick up her baby crying at night, she would just suffer through all the pain, because with rheumatoid arthritis, your joints are stiff and it
Right.
takes a while to warm them up. But obviously, if your child is crying, you just don't have the time, and you
Right.
just suffer through the pain. You just muscle through it. So she would just go through this incredible pain each night. She would pick up her baby, and 2 weeks into a plant-based diet, all of a sudden she woke up, she picked up her baby. It was the first night where she didn't feel any pain picking up her baby. So it was also like one of the moments where you just want to cry. You're like, oh, this is like so huge. This is so much worth all the effort that you're putting in.
Right.
Another study participant, when she joined the study, she was not even able to tighten up her shoelaces. 3 weeks into the study, she was able to do it without any problems. Like, these are just practical implications. It's not only about, numbers on the scale or any medical tests that, any readings. It's just about what you can do in life, how you can enjoy it
Right.
instead
Right.
of suffer.
So this is going to lead right into my next question. So an increase in microbial diversity could improve systemic inflammation, thereby reducing arterial stiffness. How does this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're coming back to the like financial portfolio, to the gut microbiome portfolio. We want to have a good portfolio of the good bacteria that just feed on fiber, produce all of the metabolites that are healthy for us. We want to have a huge number of them. That's the principle. If we don't, any major hit like taking antibiotics, which will kill, some of the bacteria, will be translated into an impairment of our metabolic health. However, if you have a large portfolio of your good bacteria, then even a hit like this, even antibiotics may not be that harmful.
Wow. Well,
Which you never know when you will need like surgery, like if you have a car accident. This has like major implications for the rest of your life.
wow. Well, in this article, and I found this part fascinating, you mentioned that the study comparing fecal microbiota between Italian children and the fecal microbiota of children living in rural Western Africa. So what were the results of this study?
Yeah, the results were that children living in Africa had a greater microbial richness. So they had more kinds of the good bacteria in their gut. In their stools, there were more short-chain fatty acids produced by the bacteria that feed on fiber. We know that in rural Africa, the diet is very much plant-based. And it's also, a whole food plant-based diet. There's not much processing going on. And also, it comes down to the whole way of living, more in tune with nature. When you pick up an apple or, something from the field, you don't use like a soap to wash all your crops. You just wash them with water, and this way you also consume some of the bacteria that live in the soil and in the water, which is very beneficial for the richness of bacteria in your gut. So if you have your own garden, that's a great way. If you pick an apple, you don't need to wash it with soap. Just use regular water, and you will get, even some of the bacteria that are in your garden in a natural way.
Nice. So you also talked about research that's showing that, the balance between Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes is an important marker for obesity. What is a possible explanation for this correlation?
That's such a great question. Firmicutes are a family of bacteria that produce a lot of endotoxins and also other molecules that promote inflammation. If you have a lot of those, it also influences other cells in your body. Like, for example, adipose tissue, the fat in your belly, also produces some molecules that may promote inflammation. The more fat in your belly, the higher probability of secreting these molecules that promote inflammation. And if you secrete the molecules from your gut that promote inflammation, this also influences other cells in your body, such as adipose tissue. And this further increases the production of inflammatory markers from the adipose tissue in your belly. So it's like linked all together, the gut bacteria, but also your fat. That's why plant-based diet promotes weight loss and also a leaner body mass. It's not only about the numbers on the scale, it's about a healthier body composition. It trims down the fat and it increases your muscle mass percentage-wise. So, that's another explanation. And it's a part of the explanation is just a healthier gut microbiome composition.
Wow. We need to get this out to the athletes. I mean,
Yeah,
we do.
absolutely. Absolutely.
We
I
do.
agree.
You also talked about non-digestible carbohydrates that could possibly offer protective effects against, cardiovascular disease and central nervous system disorders. First, what are non-digestible carbohydrates and how does this offer protective effects?
Right, so non-digestible carbohydrates, that's another word for fiber.
You
Fiber.
guys in science, you got to put, in one word is
Exactly.
good, you got to put five in, okay.
Exactly. Just think about fiber and
Okay.
different forms of fiber, soluble, insoluble, and these are just major categories of fiber. And all of the fibers together are just so incredibly protective. They, even if we consume something that we didn't intend to, some environmental toxins, the fiber will to a large degree take care of it and like exclude it from the body again, so that the absorption is slowed down, and the dangers are not so great, in contrast to an animal-based diet where you don't consume so much fiber, and then all the toxins are just going straight to your bloodstream. There's nothing to protect you.
Right.
So the fiber content of your diet is a major issue. Now, can you be on a plant-based diet and not consume enough fiber? Unfortunately, nowadays, it's also possible. So let me just say that if you are switching over to a plant-based diet, you really want to make sure it's a whole food plant-based diet as much as possible. That doesn't mean that time to time you cannot have like white rice or white bread, but it just means that for the majority of time on an everyday basis, you consume beans and whole grains and legumes and fruits and vegetables, as much in their natural form as you can to maximize your fiber intake.
Right. Well, let's talk protein because clearly I'm protein deficient. I mean, I'm sure you treat people on a day-to-day basis that are protein deficient. I mean, I'm going to curl up and die in the corner because I'm going to have no protein. Anyway, we know that that's not true. A plant-based diet more than provides enough protein for you. But let's just talk about the difference between animal and plant-based proteins and the influence, on the gut microbiota.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So many people are afraid they will not get enough protein. The truth is,
do anybody out there listening to this, do you even know anybody that's protein deficient? Do you even know what the name of the disease is that's protein deficient?
Right. I have never seen anyone with protein deficiency in my whole life.
Right?
So, if you eat enough calories, if you eat enough food, there's no way how to become protein deficient.
Right. But what's the difference between like somebody eating an animal-based, proteins? What is that going to impact? How is it going to impact their gut biome?
There's a huge difference between the effects of animal protein and plant protein on your gut microbiome. The protein by itself can influence the gut bacteria composition. The animal protein increases the relative abundance of the bad guys, while the plant protein increases the good guys. So it's really important what source of protein you're using. There's no reason to consume animal protein. You can get enough protein from beans, but even if you, for example, ate only kale or only broccoli the whole day, you would eat, huge amounts of it. But if you ate so much broccoli to get full, you would still get enough protein. So there's no reason to worry about the amount of protein.
Broccoli is like 50% protein.
Yeah.
Really? Steak is like 20? I mean, no brainer, it totally. Well, a diet high in animal protein is going to typically limit carbohydrate intake. So what impact is that going to have on the diet?
if you're limiting your carbohydrate intake, you're automatically also limiting your fiber intake. And fiber is the one nutrient where Americans are just so deficient. If there's one nutrient we should be worried about, it's not protein, it's fiber.
I know. And all these poor people that are so constipated. Oh my gosh. It's true. I mean, and that can be eliminated. You don't need to be taking drugs to eliminate the constipation in any way, shape, or form. Yep. So in what way does the quantity and the quality of consumed fat significantly impact gut microbiota composition?
Oh, this is a wonderful question. So saturated fat from animal products promotes inflammation and promotes
how about coconut too? Like
that also. So if you eat a lot of coconut oil, that will also promote inflammation and insulin resistance. A little bit less than from animal sources. For example, when they compared the effects of butter and coconut oil on blood lipids, coconut oil was a little bit better than butter, but it also increased the blood lipids, the blood cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. So it's a little bit less worse, than butter, but it's not something that we would recommend. So you want to be careful with all the tropical oils like coconut oil or palm oil. If you eat your nuts and seeds, eat them in a natural way, if possible, and be careful with added oils. If you use added oils, olive oil or avocado oil are healthy, but you don't want to dump your oil in your salad. Some people.
But I've heard from others that not to use oil at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that would be a better choice, right?
That's a valid approach as well. It kind of limits your options when you're eating out. So yes. To avoid the approach of all or nothing, like some people think, well, if I cannot do it, just forget it. I'll do just whatever. No, just do your best and use your best judgment. And if it's not in your power, to eat low fat completely all the time, if you're eating out, you can be a little bit more flexible, but whatever is in your power, eat as much whole food plant-based as you can.
Well, in your article, you talked about polyphenols. First of all, what are they and what impact do they have on bacteria in our gut?
Polyphenols are a family of phytonutrients that have been associated with lower cardiovascular disease and also lower risk of diabetes. So they have major implications for our metabolic health. And these are components of the diet that are like antioxidants. They protect us against oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the underlying pathophysiologic mechanism of all the chronic diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer. So this is huge. If we can consume some of compounds in plant-based diet that has, protective properties against oxidative stress, this is huge. And it has been found that also polyphenols influence the gut microbiome composition. And again, they promote the good guys. So it's not only fiber, like it's basically each component of the whole food plant-based diet that influences our gut microbiome and promotes the growth of the good guys. It's not only fiber, but it's also the protein and the fat and the carbohydrate and polyphenols and all the antioxidants, and there are other phytochemicals that are protective as well. It's like going into a drugstore and just putting everything in your cart and you're getting the whole cart of like different drugs in your broccoli. It's just amazing. Like we cannot even comprehend what what a variety of active compounds we are consuming when we consume a whole food plant-based diet.
Eat from the rainbow, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Eat from the rainbow. Okay.
That's
Well,
the
you
way to
talked,
go.
yeah, right? Oh my gosh. So you talked a little bit about short chain fatty acids. What role do they play in our gut microbiota?
Short chain fatty acids are protective compounds that are produced by the good guys in our gut, and they feed on fiber. So the more fiber we eat, the more we feed them. So the more good guys there will be in our gut, and the more short chain fatty acids they will produce. One study that compared the African children and the children living in Italy found major differences in their stools. So the children living in Africa had higher concentrations of short chain fatty acids. Another study that
But wait, let's go back to the kids in Italy. What were they eating? You know, more like the Western diet?
Exactly. It was more like a Western diet, more processed foods like pizza and cookies, you know, all that good stuff.
Right? Yeah. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
And another study that compared adults, African Americans, and Native Africans found higher concentrations of short chain fatty acids in Native Africans compared to African Americans, which shows you that, you know, the diet just plays a major role. It's not the genes. Like even the same population, when you relocate them and put them on a different diet, you know, that will completely change the gut microbiome. And what's also interesting, when we look at the similarity in our genes, 99.9% of our genes are the same between you and me. You know, 99.9% of our genes are the same. However, if we compared our gut microbiome, it might be up to 80% different. Yeah, there's just like a huge variability.
Yeah. Well, just going back to, you know, when people, you take them out of their own native environment, I see like where I live in New York, I live in, you know, north of the city, and I see a huge like area, like one town, like Ecuador, like there's a pipeline between Ecuador and this town. You know, Bolivia, there's another town that's almost all Bolivians,
Right.
you know, and I see this happening all the time. So what happens when they start to leave, and when you think about it, in South America, they live on a lot of beans and rice, you know, plátanos or plantains, you know, whole foods, basically. Then they come here, they start eating the SAD diet, you know, bienvenido a los Estados Unidos, you know, and they start eating the SAD diet, and immediately they start to become obese.
Right.
And second is a huge population of type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
And it's the food. I mean, if they went back to their, I call it comida simple food. If they just went back to that, it would be, they could reverse all of this between the obesity, between the type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer. I mean, it's just incredible. But
the SAD diet is really sad. However, when you look at all the traditional foods, at the you know, staple foods in all the traditional diets, it's so much plant-based. It's so easy to go to an Ethiopian restaurant or to an Indian restaurant, Chinese, Japanese, Mexican. You can eat plant-based like a king. You know, all these diets are plant-based traditionally. So it's just the animal products are kind of like artificially subsidized and introduced to the diet.
I know. We get it. Okay, we talked about the short chain fatty acids, but how does it promote immunity against our pathogens? How does this work?
The short chain fatty acids provide the nutrition for the cells in our our gut, but also for the cells of our immune system. So it just provides nutrition. That's why it promotes our immune function.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, you talked about butyrate. What is it, and what impact does it have on our health?
Butyrate is one of the short-chain fatty acids. An example of a butyrate-producing bacteria is Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. It's a complicated name.
What?
It's called Faecalibacterium prausnitzii.
Gesundheit. Okay.
It's a complicated name, but let me just share some research with you.
Oh, please.
It has been shown that people with diabetes have lower counts of Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. Faecalibacterium prausnitzii is the good guy that secrete the butyrate that can feed the cells in our gut and our immune system, and it has all these metabolic benefits. And people with diabetes have low counts of this cute bug, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. And the lower counts of this bacteria have also been associated with insulin resistance and also with inflammation. Now, the incredible news is that within a few weeks on a plant-based diet, you can increase the amount of Faecalibacterium prausnitzii in your gut. And this increase has also been associated with improved body composition and also improved insulin sensitivity. So it's like a protective mechanism against developing diabetes in the first place.
Wow. And does that work both the same for type 1 and type 2?
That's a great question. So both type 1 and type 2 diabetes benefit from increased insulin sensitivity. So absolutely, it will help both. However, we need to keep in mind that in type 1 diabetes, sometimes the insulin secretion is so diminished that people will still need to stay on their insulin. However, we can at least reduce the doses, which is huge too.
Right. Well, have you ever seen anybody like in like as soon as they were initially diagnosed, if they got onto a plant-based diet, like right away, have they reversed it, type 1?
I have never personally seen anyone like that. And in fact, we are planning a study for people with type 1 diabetes, and we would really like to look into that. How much can a plant-based diet do for people with type 1 diabetes? That's a great question. It's a valid question. Can we completely reverse the process if we switch to a plant-based diet right away? We don't really know, and this is something we would like to look into.
Because there's so many other aspects of how you can heal the body. Why couldn't you do the same for the type 1 and heal that? I mean, I get it if like somebody's been type 1 diabetic for 10 years or 15 years. I get it. We're done. The pancreas, we're done. But if we could get it as soon as they were diagnosed, that first time that they got really sick and said, okay, if we switch now, can we do that? I would love to see that study because I think that would give hope for people as soon as they got that diagnosis. Switch today. You can't play around.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
It will be exciting to see.
Oh, it would be exciting to see. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? Those people, I just feel for people that are type 1 diabetics. because, at least type 2, that there is hope that you can reverse that without question. Right. It's the food. It's the food. Change your food. But the type 1s, especially people have been that way for 5-10 years, this is the new normal, that they live with that. So TMAO.
Oh.
What is it? How is it formed in our body? And what impact does it have?
TMAO is 3-methylamine N-Oxide. It's a molecule that's produced within our gut from TMA that's coming from foods, and it's coming from animal foods. Choline that's coming from eggs, and TMA that's coming mainly from meats and dairy. All these, make the TMAO in our gut, which promotes inflammation and the oxidative stress in our body, but also the development of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. So all of these are influenced through the molecule called TMAO. Now, can we reduce the formation of TMAO? Absolutely. Just, ditch the dairy, ditch the meat, and ditch the eggs, and you will not produce as much TMAO.
So basically, our diet is the essential factor for the human gut microbiota composition. How long will it take to see changes in the composition of the intestinal microbiota? What are we talking?
This is a fascinating question. So we are developing diabetes for decades, but we can reverse it within a few days sometimes, sometimes within a few weeks or months. But still, it's a relatively short period of time compared with how long it took to develop the disease. And the same for the gut microbiome. It took us several decades, to develop the gut microbiome that we have today. However, if we switch over to a plant-based diet, we can change the gut microbiome composition within a few weeks, sometimes within a few months, but we can see dramatic shifts in the gut microbiome composition within a few weeks or months.
So I get it. Eat plants and vegetables, but is there some foods better suited to start with when you're beginning this transition?
That's a great question. The more whole food plant-based, the better. The variety is also key. So consume your fruits and vegetables, but also your legumes and whole grains, and you will get the large variety of the foods that are needed for your gut microbiome.
Is there any things that can help? Like, for example, I make my own yogurt. I make a soy yogurt, and I put probiotic in there. Is that something that's going to help the gut bio?
The fermented products are a good way how to introduce the good bacteria into your gut. However, most of them will be destroyed in your stomach, so only a small portion will reach the gut. So it's beneficial, but not as much as consuming the oligosaccharides in your plant foods that will be the food for the good guys in the gut directly. And the oligosaccharide concentrations differ between the foods. So for example, onions, whole grains, and garlic are the richest sources of these oligosaccharides. So if you like, for example, millet, that might be another whole grain that you might introduce into your diet. You might consider using onions more. But there's a large variety of foods that are really rich in oligosaccharides. So even if you don't like these specific foods, don't worry. You can find something else.
Well, one of my favorite grains is called kamut. Kamut. Have you heard of this one?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Rich, it's chewy. It's just so satisfying. I like that one.
You need to give us a recipe, your favorite recipe.
Oh, oh my gosh. Well, if you go to my website, Simply Plant-Based, under the recipes are cooking videos. And this was my I did a lot of these for Dr. John McDougall. Because he was like one of the first ones that I really latched onto in terms of in the plant-based world. And I took some of his wife's recipes and made them into cooking videos. So they're all on my website. They're free. It's there for the taking. Subscribe, like to my YouTube channel. I do a lot of interviews like this one and lectures as well, but also cooking videos because it's the food. That's the bottom line. Change the food and you'll change your health destiny. So how long have you been plant-based?
I became vegan when I was 14.
Wow, you got the memo early.
Absolutely. I was just observing the generation of my parents, and I saw that many of my parents' friends were becoming sick, they were getting cardiovascular disease and back pain. And I was like, is there any way how to avoid, all these health problems? So that started my journey early, and I switched over to a plant-based diet. I thought, well, if I want different outcomes, I need to do something differently than the generation of my parents. So I was really looking into the effects of diet, and I decided to go plant-based.
What, at 14?
Yes.
Okay, wow. You clearly you got the memo early and got it long before a lot of others. I mean, I had to hit a brick wall. I mean, that was me.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a trip to the emergency room.
Yeah.
And I started with it was like 105.5 fever.
Wow.
And my blood pressure was like 250 over 150.
Wow.
And I should have stroked out. I mean, I don't know why I didn't, but the
Mm.
woman who took care of me was not only a medical doctor, but she was a nutritionist as
Wow.
well.
Mm.
So when I got out of the hospital, and she kept asking me, what do you eat?
Mm.
What are you eating? What? And I'm like, why? What?
Right.
I have a fever.
Right.
What's going on about the food? And finally it was
Right.
like, oh, it's because that's what's running this
Right.
high performance vehicle.
Right.
So I went to see her afterwards, and she started me on Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell
Right.
Esselstyn. And that was it. I
Wow.
haven't
Wow.
looked back. So, so I've reversed high blood pressure, heart disease, my thyroid, I've healed that. So yeah, I mean, I've just seen 100 pounds, that I've lost. So it's a big change. And my husband, multiple sclerosis, he's reversed that. So, you see these changes. So, and it's coming back to the gut biome. I mean, who knew?
This is so inspiring, Jeannie. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This is wonderful.
Thank you for doing the research. Oh my gosh. I mean, without people like you to do these kinds of research and to show without question that we can change and we can heal our body, it's so powerful and so profound. So thank you so much for your beautiful article. It was awesome and well done. I mean, a team effort, I get it. So, but your team, wow, rock on, keep going. PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, amazing, amazing, place in Washington, D.C. So you guys are doing amazing work.
Thank you so much, Jeannie.
Thank you again for your time.